Magic is the opposite of science. Science says matter cannot be created, yet a magician goes...
London, 1862. A revolutionary optical stage illusion is premiered. A transparent ghost appears and disappears in front of the audience's very eyes.
The idea of making something appear and making something disappear is a basic plot for magicians.
Pepper's Ghost sent magicians on a quest for invisibility, which included the developing technologies of cinema and television.
We can't do anything outside the law of physics. We have no powers that you don't have. We just know a little bit more about how to scam.
This is the story of how magicians have taken scientific advances and used them to conjure up new ways to make things appear and disappear.
I think magic is a metaphor for life, you know, and at the beginning there's a big change, nothing is there, and then something is there. And at the end there's another big change, something is there, and then it's gone. But between birth and death, it's change every day of your life.
At the end of the 18th century, a new craze gripped Europe, a frightening entertainment that exploited our ancient dread of death and the afterlife, but which used very modern technology, the magic lantern.
Optics can be used to create the appearance and disappearance of people. It can also be used to produce ghosts.
Phantasmagoria was the creation of Etienne Gaspard Robinson. He claimed he could bring the dead back to life.
Now, you wouldn't buy a ticket for this show. You would be met on the side of the road, and then you'd be led through a graveyard. He would take you through brambles and thorns and over broken down tombs and gravestones. And the whole process would disorientate you. You would be led through a door into a space which looked like a chapel.
The illusion must have been enhanced by the atmosphere, this spooky, chilly, sepulchral auditorium.
And then suddenly... It clearly was a magical appliance because it would make things appear and disappear.
Lantern slides were painted with images of the ghosts on, and this was then projected onto a gauze screen.
He also used a lantern which moved on a truck so that the image could suddenly appear to rush towards the audience.
That was one of the first examples of an optical show, a show that was all designed around optical effects to create optical illusions for the audience.
Magicians are always looking around for different ideas for their new act, things that will draw the public into their performances. So I think, to a certain extent, magicians have drawn on scientific principles and actually used them as the covert operation of their magic principles.
Magic doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's survived only when it's kept up to date, playing on the latest hopes, fears, interests, and knowledge of the audience. The magic lantern was only the beginning. Magic entered its golden age at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And there's been a huge hunger for new illusions and innovative techniques ever since.
course, we've got to remember in the 18th century there was a lot of scientific progress at that time, so more and more people were becoming familiar with scientific principles. And in the early 19th century, the Industrial Revolution took off. And around them, they were seeing all the time scientific discoveries and progress.
The 19th century world was fascinated by the possibilities of mechanization. This threw up a new type of magician who had scientific interests.
The number one inventor in the world of magic, I would think, was Robert Houdin.
Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin is generally regarded as the father of modern magic, and it could be said that without him, even this program would not exist.
He was a clockmaker, a designer of magic, and he could perform, so he was a triple threat.
Before him, magicians had a rather lowly status, regarded as charlatans from the dark ages of superstition. But Robert Houdin brought a new respectability and technical innovation to the craft that influenced generations of magicians to come.
In the middle years of the 19th century, he opened a small theatre of magic, and fashionable society flocked to see his very individual wonders.
One of the highlights of Robert Houdin's performances were these magical automata. And automaton is a fancy word for wind-up figures, clockwork figures. But Robert Houdin's automata built on that and became magical. And they did things that no mere watchwork could have done.
One automata that nobody could fathom was Antonio Diavolo, a mechanical puppet who possessed lifelike agility and appeared to be operating alone, isolated on a swing.
He was called Antonio Diavolo after a famous circus trapeze performer of the day. Do understand that when Robert Houdin was working this, he was not using electricity. There were no computers to help him.
Diavolo wowed the audience, which never quite knew whether he was acting alone. Robert Houdin's skill was such that people were prepared to believe he could indeed have created an automatic person who could actually think for himself.
So the real art of Robert Houdin was not in building these clockwork devices. It was in taking the notion of a clockwork device and then changing it and making it magical for his audience. As soon as they thought this was an ordinary automaton, this was an ordinary wind-up motor operating this, they were fooled very badly because he had amazing secrets that were concealed inside those devices.
The magic world today has its own equivalent of Robert Houdin in John Gaunt. When you see the stage shows of people like David Copperfield and Siegfried and Roy and Doug Henning, you can bet your life that most of their major props have been made by John. He is the ultimate magical craftsman. But he spends all his spare time recreating the magic of Robert Houdin.
Okay, we have here the blooming orange tree of Robert Houdin from around 1845. Now, he would start off his performance by borrowing a handkerchief from a lady, and from another lady, her ring. It would go inside the cloth, like this, fold it up, put into this silver chalice over here, and start the magical tree. It's set on fire, and as the smoke comes up through the tree, we see it start to bloom. Yes, you can see the orange blossoms come onto the tree. And slowly, yes, we start to see oranges appear on the tree. And the attention is called to the orange up on top, and lo and behold, it would open, and two butterflies would bring out the borrowed handkerchief with the borrowed ring inside. Very poetic.